I usually don't do a wrist check, but today we're going to start off with one, and I'm wearing my Orient Star Diver. And that's because today is another one for the Orient fans. Because today we're going to check out one of the newer Bambinos. And over the years, I think I've reviewed more Bambinos than anything else. And it's not hard to see why. There are a lot of different versions offering style options for pretty much everyone, which is what helped make them a beloved entry-level dress watch among enthusiasts, as they're almost always great and always affordable. But today, the Bambino we're going to check out is special for two reasons. And I'm betting you probably haven't seen this one. So this one is special because it is one of the newer, smaller versions. And it's the second smaller version. I reviewed the first one late last year, so check that out if you hadn't seen it already. But this is their newer version that they've switched to more of a small seconds. And the second reason is that this Jade Gold colorway is actually a special run exclusive to Tusk watches. Now, Tusk watches have been my go-to for Orient for a while now. They're an authorized dealer based in the UK, and they help get these reviews made by giving me some discounts on Orients. So if you're looking for an Orient, Tusk is a good place to start, especially if you're in the UK. And especially if you want this one. So again, this is one of the newer, smaller Bambinos. The older versions were about 40 millimeters, but these new ones are 38. And I think that winds up being perfect for those in the slim-wristed club. Or for those purists that think a larger 40 millimeter dress watch is like leather on a diver. Lug-to-lug here is also really short at 44¼ millimeters. It uses 20 millimeter straps, which is another great change with these smaller versions, as the older ones kind of use that odd 21 millimeter size straps, which were pretty hard to find if you wanted to swap it out. So here, there are plenty of easy to find aftermarket straps available. And you'll actually need it, but more on that later. It's also powered by Orient's own in-house F6222 movement, which you probably haven't heard of before, but for the most part, it's equivalent to a Seiko NH3 series. So it's a reliable workhorse for an affordable watch. And we also can't forget this gorgeous looking tall domed crystal. It's one of the Bambino's key features. And even with that crystal and an exhibition case back, it's only 12.25 millimeters thick. Now, of course, there are some downsides to this as well. It is an affordable dress watch. So it's not really made to be ultra capable and durable. So here you're only looking at 50 meters of water resistance. And I need to point out that this gorgeous looking crystal is mineral, not sapphire. So it is going to be more scratch prone than some other materials. But when you consider the price, it's all pretty reasonable. And speaking of price, it's always important to remember that the prices of Orients swing wildly depending on where you look. It's just kind of been a fact of Orient over the last decade or so. And I've seen these smaller, small second versions from the low 2s all the way up to the high 3s. So look around and just see what you can find out there. And with this one specifically, again, it's only available at Tusk Watches. And they have it listed at 288 pounds, or about 360 US. Now, there are a lot of different versions of Bambinos, and in the past, they were always referred to by a version number. Like this one right here, my favorite Bambino, is a version 2. And it does look similar to this newer one, but again, more on that in a little bit. But at this point, I've lost track of what this one is. Maybe it's an 8, maybe it's a 9, I'm not sure. And I've also seen this one referred to as a version 2 small seconds. Because again, it looks like a small second version of that version 2 Bambino, which for me is a great thing. My favorite Bambino was the version 2, and my second favorite was a small seconds version, and this is a combination of both. Now, I know some of you out there love a cleaner, more sterile design on a dress watch. But personally, I love the look of these with the Roman numerals and the minute track on the outer edge, which is something I've mentioned many times over the years. When it comes to dress watches, I like something a little more complex and engaging, rather than clean and sterile. And here, not only do these extra details give it a great refined retro look, but I also think it makes it easier and quicker to read compared to a full minimalist Bauhaus design. And with my older version 2, I really love the satin finish on that dial and the gold indices, all of which were paired with a stainless case. It was a great combo, creating a watch that had a touch of flashy bling, but was still fairly subtle from a distance. And a lot of what I loved about that version too is here. It's just now the dial's been shifted to be a small seconds, possibly upping that retro factor a little bit, as well as being smaller and a little more comfortable on the wrist. Now, for this version 2, smaller small seconds version, there are a number of different colorways available. But this one, which again is exclusive to TUS watches, is officially called Forest Green. And I found this dial color really interesting, and especially when you remember that Seiko and Orient are connected. It's a little bit convoluted, but basically they're kind of sister-brother brands, all under the greater Seiko umbrella. And when you remember what Seiko usually does with the green dial, like say the Alpinist or the Mojito, seeing this color green is interesting because it's a very different color green than they usually use. It's not that very vibrant, flashy emerald of the Alpinist. It's kind of duller, and I guess you could say lighter. Yet it's also not quite as light or as boring as I've seen from some military green dials in the past. This one is more like a creamy jade with just a slight amount of satiny sheen to it. It still is a sunburst dial, but it is kind of between those other two, making it a lot more subtle than the green Alpinist, as well as potentially a good choice for those that always thought those Alpinists or maybe the Mojito were just a little bit too flashy. So this is a little bit more toned down and a little bit more subtle, yet I think it still looks good with the gold hands and indices, and comes across as very attractive. And I'd love to see more dials like this from Orient or maybe even an Orient Star. Now before we move on, just a couple quick comments about the hands. And that's just because with the Fiend style hands, I always get a couple of comments asking me why they're black or why they just fade into the background. And it's not really the case because these hands are gold, not black. They're just really flat and reflective. So without purposely introducing glare onto the crystal, they wind up just reflecting the black of the lens of the camera. And as long as I'm at it, another comment that always comes up when I show off a dial with Roman numerals is that yes, down here the 4 is technically not correct for Roman numerals. It should be IV, not 4 I's. But the thing is, for watches, this is normal. This is very common. It's tradition. I don't exactly know why or how it started, but I think it's there just to help balance out the symmetry of the dial. So while yes, it's technically wrong, it's also not wrong in terms of a watch. And again, I'm bringing this up because without fail, somebody always brings it up in a comment. But let's get back to the design. Now, this is a great looking design for a Bambino, and I personally really love this over the previous smaller version I looked at. That one with its blued hands that weren't quite as blued as I'd like just didn't really vibe with me. And like I said before, while some of you may love the more minimalist look, for me, this is perfect for a dress watch. It's just more me with the elegance and complexity thrown in. As well as I think moving the second hand down to the small second dial makes it even more symmetrical than the original version 2's. It just seems more balanced somehow. The only thing that I really don't like here is the date. Generally, I do like a date on an everyday watch, but here, the white date wheel and the black text, it just seems to stand out way too much against the green dial, and winds up being distracting. Otherwise, a lot of this watch is pretty similar to the other Bambinos. The case, while smaller, is about the same as those other ones, which is to say it's rather clean and minimalist and just kind of more there to frame in the dial and the crystal. The logo's also the same, which I know some of you like, some of you really don't like, and some of you hate with a burning passion. Now, it's not available in this watch, but there are a couple of new 75th anniversary watches out there where they do change the logo to be a bit more older and retro. But here, with these smaller, small second versions, it just kind of is what it is. Which you could also say about the strap. Again, it's 20 millimeters, which is a great change. But otherwise, it's just like every other Orient Bambino strap out there, which is to say it sucks. It looks okay, but it is pretty stiff and kind of cheap leather. Leather that takes forever to break in. So like I've said with other reviews, do yourself a favor. If you order one of these, just order a new strap at the same time. It doesn't have to be anything crazy or expensive, but you'll thank me if you do. And especially when you put it on your wrist. The size here is great and it weighs nothing. So pair that with a good strap and it's fantastic to wear. Plus, I think this particular dial looks much better on a lighter colored leather than what they shipped it with. And before we wrap this whole thing up, one quick word about value. And this is going to be about all the Bambinos that are out there, not just this one. And this is going to be a little bit of a rambling story. So when I first started the channel, Bambinos were well loved because they were really affordable. In fact, I think I got my first one, that version 2, for like 60 to 80 bucks used. And on top of that, they were nicely built and flat out gorgeous for the price. And that's something you could say about all Orients back then. But times have changed and the market's a bit different these days. As Orient's prices have gotten a little bit higher, microbrands have become more prominent, and the all-express brands finally got their act together. So these days, it really wouldn't be hard to find a nice-looking, better-built dress watch for the same or less. Something with a sapphire crystal, a better case, maybe a better strap or bracelet. And this is especially going to be true from San Martin or maybe some of the Islander watches out there. And if you're looking for a watch in this price range, value is something you should consider, and those are some other brands you should also look at the same time. But the thing is, there's still something really great about the Bambino design. And particularly this one or the older version 2s, it's a look and a feel that I've not seen from any of the Ollie brands or micro brands, with maybe the exception being Vario. So the bottom line here is that while they may not necessarily be the best value anymore, there's still something rather special about the Bambinos, which has kept them persisting as a favorite among enthusiasts all these years, as they're some of the best looking watches in the affordable space, with a ton of different dial designs offering something for everyone. So if you're looking in this price range, that is something you should consider. Value is important, but so is also really liking the design what you have on your wrist. But as usual, let me know your thoughts on this one down below, or Orients in general. And as always, you guys know what to do down below. Like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. I'm Shane, this is Relative Time, and I'll see you next time.